Tonight, I'm going to talk with you about working from home, or, as some people are referring to it, holy shit, how do I justify my overpriced terrible coffee from Starbucks now if I'm not commuting? No, really, I didn't even know they'd stopped doing Marmite and cheese paninis. That second bit is true, by the way. The much-loved breakfast sandwich has been axed from their menu, but don't worry, Marmite fans. You can now elevate yourself to peak middle class by getting your favourite beer brewing byproduct as a hummus. No, really. Someone in a marketing department at Unilever genuinely decided that crushed chickpea and garlic could be improved by adding the sludge left over after alcoholic wheat soda is made. And you know what? They were wrong. So very, very wrong. To start with, let's make this all make sense in the current context, not the Marmite hummus, the working from home. There isn't anything in the known universe which makes that make sense. Back in the long-forgotten past of last year, a strange and distant time when life was literally different, people who engaged in the vast majority of jobs went to this thing called an office. It was a curious place. There were human beings that didn't live in your household and furniture provided by your employer. A place where the electricity was paid for and your colleagues tried to steal your lunch. Truly a different world. To get to these offices, workers would have to undertake a commute, which involved waking up extremely early, leaving the place where you eat, sleep and wash your genitals, walking to a station, buying yourself a cup of hot water, cow extract and ground up bean, and then getting on a giant metal tube weighing hundreds of tons, propelled by enslaved lightning and filled to the brim with other miserable people. Imagine explaining to the you of April 2019, for whom that was a pretty normal occurrence, that they would soon be locked in their house 23 hours a day, that there would be no escape from the horror of either their cloying loneliness or a massive excess of time with the people they once used to love, that the only escape from said loneliness / human excess would be going for regimented exercise, and that they should urgently invest every single penny that they have access to in shares of a digital communications company named after a major villain from DC's The Flash. In these two very different descriptions of normal, taken only 12 months apart, which sounds more utterly insane? That's not the opening to a joke. I'm genuinely curious. I actually don't know. And I'm not sure whether that says more about the human ability to adapt or the possibility that we might all be certifiably nuts. Either way, what used to be the fringe benefit of working for modern tech startups in San Francisco has now become part of daily life for an ever-increasing number of people throughout the world. Working from home is here to stay. And that raises some questions.
COVID-19 is transforming people's relationship to work, with millions now out of a job. And many more getting used to working in a very different way. The proportion of Americans working from home full-time has gone from 1 in 50 to more than 1 in 3.
COVID has been a transformation, and that raises a whole bunch of questions. Do you need as much expensive office space? And do individual workers need to commute into the office every day?
The need for workers to gather together in offices has shaped almost every aspect of modern life. And the shift towards remote working could have far-reaching consequences. It could alter the shape and purpose of cities, affect gender equality, and even change how we think about time.
That's absolutely right. If you live in a major metropolitan area, then the entirety of the world around you is constructed purely to ensure that people working in offices in large numbers have their every need catered to, from the towering, hive-like residential blocks to the restaurants and shops and public transport. All of it is designed to keep you in so you can do your work more easily. Even the apologetic drug dealer on the street corner saying he doesn't have Coke, would Pepsi be okay? The answer to that is, of course, no. But if he's got it, maybe some heroin. Every aspect of that city has been planned to, at least in theory, move the maximum number of people between their homes and their jobs in the quickest possible way, whilst ensuring they feel like their overall needs are catered for. Big cities are the beating heart of the centre of modern capitalism, except we've proven this year that that isn't true, nor does it need to be the case. Doing something a certain way because that's how it's always been done is the kind of logic that would have kept mankind in caves. It's the exact kind of logic that keeps people watching the Kardashians. They just, keep going or whatever, so I guess I will too, but it's like watching a stop-motion animation with Bratz dolls now or something. The idea of working from home, even in its current guise of remote computing, is not new. In fact, the idea can be traced directly to a man named Jack Nillis all the way back in 1972. Nillis began working on a complex communication system for NASA, and he is the first person to coin the phrase telecommuting as a part of what he was actually doing at the time. So the next time you question why money should be put into space exploration, it's probably best to remember that one of the reasons you can be paid to sit at home in nothing but your pants eating crisps while supposedly working is courtesy of the original space race. There are other useful things too, but that's the main one of interest right now. Obviously, the internet didn't exist entirely in its current guise until 1989, but between 1972 and Sir Tim Berners-Lee's first website at CERN, there were already networks on which specialists could access their work remotely and thus, theoretically, work from home. So this has been a realistic option for at least 4 decades. The big change in remote working, though, the point at which it entered the minds of the workforce as we have it today, can best be traced to the dot-com revolution of the late 90s and early 2000s, when it began being offered as a perk by the same kind of companies who consider beanbags in a games room to be essential office environment. Actually, you know what? That sounded really dismissive. Beanbags in a games room are essential to the office environment. More places should embrace the idea that their workforce would be far, far happier and more productive if they could take 10 minutes out of every day to thrash their colleagues on Mariokart. Speaking of productivity, it is often said that working from home can negatively impact the productivity of a workforce. Many traditional business leaders are all too willing to point out that a person who is able to access their own sofa, TV and fridge all day is less likely to be willing to engage properly in their daily grind than someone in an office. Unfortunately for them, that simply doesn't seem to be the case. Here's some of the findings from an experiment run over the course of about 2 years at a company in China.
So, what do we find? Well, before I show you the results, I want to, prepare you by saying, remember what motivated it. What motivated it? C-Trip's desperate to save money because they're paying an enormous amount to house all these people in Shanghai. Their view was they'd save a lot of money on getting rid of rent. They'd probably take a bit of a hit on people going home and basically goofing off. I remember one of them saying they're worrying about them watching, the Chinese equivalent of Jerry Springer or playing computer games. So they're kind of mildly pessimistic, but they wanted to see what happened. So what do we find? Well, we found massive improvement performances. So a 13% improvement in performance from people working at home, which is huge. That's almost 1 day a week. So how on earth did this happen? Where did this come from? Well, it came from 2 things. One is people working from home really work their full shift. So if in the office you're supposed to be there 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, but they'll often come in late because the motorbike broke down, or they have a long lunch break because they go and have a drink or two, they'll leave early to let the cable repair guy in. Whatever it is, they were definitely not working all of the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, whereas people at home were much better at keeping time. The second fact was, it's far easier to concentrate at home. For all of you that's worked from home, the office is actually an amazingly noisy environment. So we'd hear stories of, the person on the desk next door to me, her boyfriend's just left her, she's in tears. There's a cake in the breakout room, Bob's leaving, come join. The World Cup sweepstake is going, you've got to, whatever it is, the office is actually super distracting.
That's right, the office is super distracting. Bob's leaving cake is going to attract a lot of people away from their desks, particularly if the cake is delicious and Bob is an absolutely terrible human being who you can't wait to see the back of. That said, it slightly belittles how serious a situation that is. A 2017 study has suggested that the average worker spends in excess of 2 hours a day procrastinating whilst at work. That sounds unbelievably huge, but think about it. Your morning routine probably includes a trip to the kitchen or break room for making coffee, and that will include time chatting to your co-workers. You undoubtedly go to the toilet during the day at some point, unless you're some kind of strange human-camel hybrid. You probably check your social media in periods of low workload because, let's be honest, we're all addicted. And then maybe you get up, get another drink and catch up with another set of colleagues, and it all adds up fairly quickly. In the UK as well, there is a tendency to think that being at the office for longer makes you a better employee. Multiple studies have shown that this is the opposite of the truth, and it's one of the things that encourages workers to procrastinate during the day. If people think, well, my employer will only notice me if I'm here from 8:30 in the morning until 7 at night, and then they'll think I'm working really hard for promotion, then they tend to be less productive, especially as it can impact the long-term mental health due to increased stress and reduced time with family, although that obviously depends a lot on how much you like your family. If your name is Elizabeth Fritzl, for example, then you probably would have preferred to be in the office. But it's not just that. You've also got to allow the 45-minute average commute time each way to and from the office. That doesn't sound like much, and it's easily dismissed by us as workers, but it means that over the course of a year, the average person spends a full 8.5 working weeks commuting and not being paid for it. Actually, that's not even not being paid for it. You are actively paying to do this. Unless you have an enhanced leave package in the UK, this means that you get fewer hours leave a year than you spend commuting. That is a lot of time wasted in one way or another, and it's certainly something to keep in mind when looking at the results of switching to working from home. All of that said, it doesn't suit everyone.
Finally, at the end of the experiment, it was so successful, Citric rolled it out to the whole company. And they let everyone change their mind. So some people actually gave up working from home. There's the old saying that the three great enemies of working from home are the fridge, the television, and the bed. And so, some people, got overcome by one or many of those three. And they, they rightfully said, look, I can't take it anymore. I'm coming back into the office. Other people changed their mind. What you saw after the end of it is performance goes up by 24% because basically only the people that are left or only the people that work from home are the people that can concentrate. So choice in combination of working from home is just hugely impactful. And it doesn't need to be 4 days a week. It can be 1 day a week if you want, but certainly some combination of a bit of working from home and a bit of choice is incredibly impactful.
That's right. A portion of people opted to go back. The lure of the fridge and the TV was just too much for some, but a huge number of employees who weren't originally eligible also chose to then join the work from home programme after the original experiment. The flexibility is the key. Chocolate ice cream is wonderful for most people, but only if we're not being forced to bathe in it. No. For some, there will be other very good reasons to go back into the office and face that unrelenting commute. Many people entering the workforce are having to rent rooms in a house share, so potentially they don't have the kind of office space an older, more senior employee might have access to. Maybe not even anywhere quiet to work at all, apart from within the same 3.5 square metre room that they sleep in. Also, younger people, often new to a business, know that they will benefit hugely from being around older co-workers, sharing their experience and knowledge. They know that the kind of conversation that sparks that sharing of knowledge isn't the sort of thing that a Zoom call will necessarily trigger, that the kind of conversation that perhaps requires one to have trousers on for.
All right. Talk to you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
See you guys.
Tony!
Can you hear us?
Tony!
Oh no! Don't, Jen, call him. Oh my gosh! Hold on, I'm gonna text a couple pictures of that. Oh. Oh. Oh boy.
What's up?
Tony, I can see you when you're
We can
under
all
there.
see you.
Now, don't pretend you didn't think of doing it yourself. It is an undeniably powerful look, and you don't know how many co-workers have done it to you in the last 4 months. Hell, I could be doing it right now. You just don't know. Here's the kicker though. One of the things that came out of the work from home pattern was that people tended to do their own research and then follow guided routines when it came to personal attention spans and balance of productivity. Obviously, the exact routine depended on which study had been viewed, but the timings weren't all that different across the spectrum. Something in the region of work for 50 minutes, take 17 minutes away from your computer completely, rinse and repeat. This is meant to be good for your attention span, good for your overall health, and good for your productivity. And that's great. Improved work-home life balance is great. Better overall health is great. Personal responsibility is great. Doing your work to the best of your ability, your way, is great. But a lot of employers are still of the mindset that it's time on task rather than the task itself that's the value of an employee. And as such, many have taken the time during lockdown to roll out productivity monitoring software such as Hubstaff or ActiveTrack. Amongst other features, these kinds of softwares track the gap between mouse inputs on company PCs and laptops, meaning that employees can't have any management over their own time, or the software will ping them for laziness. So, companies have hired an employee and trusted them with representing the business. The employees have continued to turn in work that meets all of the requirements for standards and deadlines, and then at the first possible opportunity, the companies try to effectively chain workers to their own desk at home like a Victorian child labourer in a poorhouse. And this isn't just basic employee degradation. This is Marks and Spencer's our best ever employee degradation. This is the kind of degradation that leaves a really unpleasant taste in the mouth and comes with prolonged periods of wanting to tell your line manager to take his stapler and wedge it firmly sideways up his arse. The kind of degradation one usually has to find specific clubs for and pay outlandish sums of money to achieve. This is degradation without a safe word. Many of these people have chosen to return to the office because they're under less scrutiny and therefore are more productive in a place surrounded by people and constant noise and unrelenting distractions. A place that's still better than being forced to move your mouse every 10 minutes in the comfort of your own home. That's right, folks. The depressing mainstay of British industry in recent years, the twat waffle middle managers who are in positions of power based on self-aggrandising rather than actual competence, have managed to take something proven to improve output and quality of life and have completely fucked it up. And if you didn't have someone spring into your mind just then when I was describing the self-aggrandising twat waffle middle managers, then congratulations, it's probably you. Another reason that some people have gone back to work is simply because they've been forced to. Interestingly, some of the worst offenders for this are actually the government. MPs have been urged to get civil servants back into the office, regardless of whether they're still shielding to protect family members, with some business leaders who advise the government just oozing empathy in suggesting that if they don't return, they should be sacked.
Transport for London, Tom, is bankrupt. It's been nationalised. All of the trains across the country have been nationalised. Okay, there's nobody on them. I caught the train the other day. I had the carriage to myself.
Well, you've just heard Sir Martin Sorrell. You've just heard Sir Martin Sorrell say that he feels that government transport policy, local government transport policy, is incredibly confusing, particularly things like the congestion charge in London that has been increased.
Correct.
He wanted to see it go down.
Exactly. So you've got to incentivise people to come back into the city centre. Well, if you make the transport free for 6 months, the government must lead by example. There's hundreds of thousands of civil servants need to come back into the office, and bluntly, if not, then let them go. There are plenty of other people who can do the job.
You would get rid of people who don't come back into the office.
Yeah, and actually, it may well be you're
going to have to get rid of an awful lot of workers, Mr. Tice, on the proportions that we're seeing from this survey. You know, it's 66% of workers.
As you've seen, hundreds of thousands of people are losing their jobs in the related service activities that look after and service the office workers. Firms like the Daily Mail.
What reason would you sack them? What's the reason for sacking them?
Because the government has got to, it's got to lead by example. We're talking. If we don't do this, the economy is just going to literally go down, continue to go down a vicious spiral into the kitchen sink. This is really, really serious.
Okay.
And it's a question of incentivising people. And I think there is a real productivity issue with people working from home.
That's right. Richard Tice, businessman, former MEP and chairman of the Brexit Party, thinks that the best way to solve escalating unemployment is to threaten those still in work with mass unemployment. That's like the US solving its gun problem by buying more guns to shoot the guns that they already have. It is mental. Not to mention that he's a businessman who doesn't seem to understand basic labour law, nor the facts on work from home productivity. Nor is it just any job that he thinks should be bullied like this either. No. Mr. Tice thinks that there are qualified, experienced people simply queuing up to be civil servants, and that the only reason they aren't doing those jobs right now is because other people are selfishly filling those roles. I guess that must be why, at time of recording this episode, there were 1,129 civil service jobs being advertised on their recruitment website. 1,129! It's almost just potentially as though Richard Tice didn't bother to check his facts before opening his damn mouth. That would be incredibly unusual from anyone associated with the Brexit Party. As for why this urgent return to work is being suggested, we have to go back a few years to the early 2000s when economists started talking about the latte factor. David Back even wrote a book about it. These economists argued that little expenditure that we don't notice regularly enough, specifically the purchase of coffee every day on the way to work, has a massive impact on the financial stability of the population. This morphed over the course of the last few years into the incorrect notion that millennials can't afford houses because they're all buying avocado on toast. So, these same economists who lambasted the population for spending their money on coffee should be overjoyed, right? Socially distanced parties in the street for David Back & Co. The immediate righting of the housing market ship, listing so badly until now. No, of course not. You might have noticed that the other latte effect is that coffee shops are now everywhere. Whole sections of towns and cities are now overrun with Starbucks and Costa and Nero and Pret and Eat and panini shops and independent stands. It's almost as though they multiply by mitosis. I'm sure we've all hoped that there might be few of them around at some point, but they've become massive employers throughout the UK. Starbucks alone employs 14,000 people in Great Britain. The impact of people not buying pumpkin spice lattes and halloumi wraps and raspberry muffins is huge. Yes, Starbucks might be able to pin it on getting rid of that cheese and Marmite BAP, hashtag bring back the BAP, but Pret-a-Manger have earmarked 30 stores for closure. Upper Crust are looking at a minimum of 5,000 redundancies. This is a serious situation, and one can understand that the government want to get people back into their offices so that it can help sustain other businesses, although Richard Tice's poorly researched, poorly thought out recommendation is clearly not the answer. So, what is the answer? Well, I don't know entirely. Clearly the whole economy can't hinge on us drinking vat loads of overpriced cappuccino and devouring mountains of sourdough bread. The country can't stay in this post-Covid limbo forever as it continues to hemorrhage jobs in the service sector, nor should we be either forcing people back to the office or tethering them to their laptops at home. Perhaps it's time to have a fresh approach going forward. Maybe, just maybe, we need to give people the rope to hang themselves with, trust them to do the work with fewer restrictions, and then see what the actual outcome is. Who knows? Maybe we should actually be following genuine research and allowing that to guide us rather than previous prejudice. Or not. It is the post-fact era after all. Until next time, good night. We get everything? Cool. That's good.